For most of our lives, we're told that more is better. Everything should be up and to the right. More money, more time, more fitness, more exercise, more food, more this, more that, more experiences. And a lot of that I agree with. But there's some that, as I have more experience with cars, I don't necessarily agree with. I was told this a long time ago by Al, Turbo Yoda, that cars can be over-engined. Now, you've already noticed that I'm sitting in front of the Levorg. This car is not over-engined, but what it is over-turboed. So in this episode, we're going to fix it. This is my Subaru Levorg. It's a 2017 car. It's got an engine that's a flat 6, which is a 3 litre. It was built, we went to Possumbourne Motorsport over in New Zealand and we built an engine for it. It's been a really, really long journey getting this thing working. The Levorg itself has a 2018 STI running gear in it, so that's a 6-speed manual, a nice diff with a diff controller. It's a strong setup, it's got good brakes, good hubs, good wheels, all that stuff is really, really great, and it's been an excellent car to drive. But I would say, when we put the big turbo on it, and Al came and helped with that as well, I did notice on the dyno, it's probably the only car I've had with a really, 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 really long spool and then a massive power heat. It made around 425 kilowatts. That's just under 600 horsepower. On the street, that's great, but way too fast. Actually, it's just too much power for the street. Not necessarily too much power, the power just comes on too late. You have to rev it so hard, the speeds are high, it's not really what I want for a street car, especially when it's a wagon and it's so practical and awesome. And yes, it's got a tow bar on it. So what I've decided to do is put a smaller turbo on it. Let me show you how that went down.
The turbo I originally chose for the Levorg was a G35-900, otherwise known as a 6262G. It's rated to a maximum of 900 horsepower or around 670 kilowatts. Of course, those numbers vary depending on your exact setup. Turbo selection is a mix of science and experience, and the logic with this turbo was that we wanted a big rear housing so it didn't restrict the engine too much and we could make power at big revs, potentially getting up near the 500 kilowatt mark. We never quite got there as the boost control didn't want to play ball and we were stuck at 25 pounds of boost. In reality, the engine just took too long to spool that turbo, resulting in a car that felt laggy for a daily driver. So I was faced with a choice: leave the turbo as is, fix the wastegate issue and shoot for the moon, or swap in a turbo that would come on earlier but would probably mean I'd never make that big peak power number ever again. I'm extremely lucky to have mates like Scott, Al and other knowledgeable people I can hit with questions like this, so that's exactly what I did.
G'day mate, how are you?
I'm really good. I won't keep you. I've just got a quick question for you about turbos, if that's all right.
Attack. Yeah,
So,
yeah, what do we got?
on this Levorg that we had the G35-900 or the Pulsar equivalent.
Yeah, big boy.
Yeah, big boy. So that one, I've got my eye on that to put that onto the RX-7, which is like the right turbo for that.
I like. Really roughly, what sort of power are you expecting out of the
RX-7, sub 300, and it's a stock motor, so whatever they're happy with, that they don't throw seals out the side of the exhaust, but it should be a pretty nice setup.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I reckon that. Yeah, that makes sense.
Cool.
Small 60 mil, 62 mil.
Yes, that sounds right.
62. That's right. Yep. Okay.
And so with the Levorg, I want to do one step down, so from the 35-900 to a 35-770, which I think just has a slightly smaller wheel and a slightly smaller rear housing. And that turbo size on those built 3 litres seems to be the sweet spot where you get just under 400 kilowatts, but it comes on real nice and stays on.
Like if we start it, before we had 10 to 20, if we start from 15 to 30, like Jesus Christ, like
it'll be great.
We're in the ballpark.
Yeah, that sounds excellent. All right, mate, I'll push ahead with that and I'll see you for some dyno in the near future.
I'm actually keen to start cracking into that sort of stuff again, so it should be really good.
Awesome, mate. All right, have a good day. I'll chat to you soon.
Good on you, mate.
Thanks, Scotty.
Yeah.
Bye.
With a potential new rotary home picked out for the old Levorg turbo and the idea of an even smaller one in the bin, this slightly smaller option will hopefully get the responsiveness back that I've been craving so much. Externally, these turbos are nearly identical, meaning the dump and up pipe will bolt on, as well as all the fittings for coolant and oil.
Okay, so I've attached the oil outlet, inlet, the coolant in and out, and the 2 housings. Everything's still loose, so I can place it in the Levorg, see if it's going to play ball. It should all fit. But also I may have to do something about this, because when we originally made it, we put this elbow on the front. I don't have that elbow, so I'll either need to get one or for now just put a silicone on so I can test it and then see how we go on the Levorg.
Due to how cramped everything is in the engine bay, the wastegate is pretty tricky to access. While everything's off, I'm going to take the opportunity to add some extra spring to the GFB wastegate that's controlling the boost pressure. The The best way to do this off the car is to stick it in a vise and then change the springs to get the right combination for the target wastegate boost pressure.
Alan.
What is up?
Hey, bro. Can I ask you a quick EX44 question, please?
Okay.
So on the Levorg, you've probably seen they come with 2 or 3 springs, like a centre and a middle and an outer.
Yep.
The Levorg's got the 10-pound outer and the 5-pound inner. It doesn't have the 7-pound middle spring, but we weren't seeing 15 pounds of gate pressure on the dyno with that configuration, and we ran out of gate. Do you think it could be something to do with how the gate flows or connects or the size of it, or because I'm swapping that turbo over today?
Yes, it's a kind of what you would call a dynamic system. So
Sure.
you can sort of throw, I want this at it, but that doesn't mean anything really. Like it's,
Yep.
you got to just give it what it actually wants. If it's happy running 17 pound of base pressure, then just put that in there, yeah.
Cool. Okay.
Because it's not going to be an issue. Like if it was a stock engine, I'd be like, no, don't do that, because
Yep.
you can't go down. You can't back out of it. Like it is what it is.
Yep.
So, but yeah, with that engine, yeah, just do it.
Great. Okay. Cool. That might be the answer then.
Yep. Yeah. Sounds like a reasonable plan.
Excellent.
One of those things you don't know until you send it, sort of thing.
Yeah. Exactly. All right, man. Well, I'm going to chuck this turbo on, and I'll let you know what happens.
Radio.
Thanks, my friend. Talk to you later.
Yeah, mate.
Bye. Okay, so we have our big outer spring. That gets you 10 pounds. This is a 5-pound spring. That gets you 15. If you take that one out and chuck in this intermediate spring, you've now got 17. So that's how you adjust the pressure on the diaphragm and that in the wastegate. That's the way you do it with the GFB one. Might work differently for other wastegates. But anyway, that gives you an idea of how this works. We are going to go for 17. Because 17 of gate pressure is actually fine on that engine. 17 pounds is perfect. That can be the low boost, and it means that boost control doesn't have to work very hard to get us into the 20s and hopefully up near the 30s, depending on what that turbo will do. Put this back together, put it all back in the car, cross our fingers that it works. The turbo is swapped. That was not too painless, considering you had to get the wastegate off, change the spring. We've got a different configuration down here with the hot pipe, but everything has bolted in nicely. It's a testament to Al's work. Thank you, Al. Just awesome. So now, going to start it up and make sure it still idles and runs and everything's happy. So tune-wise, yes, it needs to be retuned because the turbo profile will be completely different, but the Haltech is smart enough to at least let me be able to drive it. I just got to take it easy with my right foot and not load it up too much. Because it will change the way that the air gets into the engine. So, let's see if she starts. Here we go. You can hear it whistling. Cool.
The turbo swap has been a success, so now I'm going to jump in the Levorg and head to Haltech, see my mate Scotty, and see if downsizing the turbo is actually going to make the car faster.
I'm here at Haltech on the Haltech dyno with Scotty, otherwise known as Tuning for, one of the absolute best dudes you'll ever meet in your whole life, and very, very clever. Scotty, I put a big turbo on it. I put a G35-900 with a 102 rear housing, which, as I understand, is a reasonably big turbo.
That's a big turbo for any engine, let alone a big turbo for
A 3-litre?
Subaru engine.
Okay, well, we're going to lay off the Subaru for now, but no, you're right.
As a Subaru lover, you also have to understand what the Subaru's supposed to be doing, and that's not making bulk power.
So we made about 420, 425 kilowatts, a really good number. The motor had some weird noise, which I then since have basically fixed. It was some top-end stuff and some clearances, which we fixed. Since then, since you've seen it, I've now put a 35-770 with a 0.82 rear housing.
Nice.
It's just that kind of one step smaller, and I know there's people getting around with a combo very similar to this that I've been in their cars, and that's just more responsive.
Yeah.
So what's your feeling on that
And
stuff?
this is the bit where I'm all for a big turbo and huge horsepower. Like, I love it. But it does come with a trade-off. And you've got to remember that the bigger the turbo that you put on it, the more lag it's going to have.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty keen on having something that's the right size so that when you drive it on the street, it is punchy. Like, something that comes on at $5,000 and is all over by 7.
Yeah.
Like, I get it. It'll run mile an hour at the track.
Yeah.
But your mate on the street with half the horsepower will outrun you to 120.
Especially in a manual car too, right?
So you got to be, like, yeah, you have to have that trade. With turbo technology now, things are getting way better where we've got a huge variety of turbine housings and billet compressor wheels that make a massive difference, and they're made all of these fancy materials so they spool up faster. Like, back in the day, like, we had those old school turbos where you had, like, they were coming on at $6,000 and stuff. Like, it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
So you do have the options for heaps of housing. So picking something that makes the good power down low while being pretty much at its maximum at your max power. You don't want to be finding a turbocharger that's going to guarantee you could make 1,000 at the wheels and only making 700 or 800.
Yes. There was 3 options. There was a 900 I had, this 770. Then I could have dropped a whole frame size down to like a 30.
Yep.
Still 770. The naming convention is different for all turbos. I know there's all different 56, 64s, whatever. That's the one I've picked because I understand it. There was the option to go one smaller again. I picked the middle one.
Yeah.
So on the dyno, it's possible we won't see that much difference, but even driving it here, because I basically just plugged in that turbo, which went straight onto the existing mounts that we made.
Perfect.
And drove it. And the map is, probably not 100% where it needs to be, but that's why I'm here.
So that's a good thing to bring up. So when you've changed this turbocharger, you've changed the front and the rear to a smaller housing and just bolted the thing on, job done.
Yeah.
And then you can put different rear housings on that as well and change them. Leave the same supercore, but change the rear housing.
Exactly, yeah.
So you do have choices to be able to make changes after the fact. And I see a lot of people sort of just putting up with having a huge rear housing that after it's all said and done, they don't necessarily need. But for a couple $100 with no fabrication work, which is the complicated part, to be able to change a rear housing to make it feel better. Yes, you lose a bit of headroom in the horsepower that you may be able to make.
Possibly.
But if you've already had it tuned and you're out of engine or camshaft or something else, I really do think it's good money to be spending to make it drivable down low, like exactly what you're doing here by replacing like the whole turbocharger.
So we might lose some up top, we might lose some top end, we may not, depending on how the shape ends up looking. It might actually just make so much more power everywhere that you wouldn't even notice that it's a little bit down. I know this combo works. This is a built engine. It's still a Subaru engine. It's still, anything can happen. It could still blow up. But I'm feeling confident. And the turbo that was on this is going on something else, so it's not wasted at all.
And we'll have to use 100% of it on the other thing, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And so someone's come to you, I've changed my turbo. What do you do?
So the first thing we'll do is we'll pull up the last dyno sheets of this and see what's going on. Then we'll pull a heap of timing out of it because the rear housing does affect how much ignition timing goes into the engine.
Okay.
It affects how much it breathes. It affects the exhaust back pressure. So we'll pull a heap of timing out of it to make it safe as houses to start with. Then we'll check over the fueling. And the fueling's going to give us a good indication of the efficiency of the engine. So we know how efficient it used to be, meaning that for one camshaft revolution, how much pumping it was across the engine. So a 3-litre engine, for example, 3 litres in, 3 litres out for an aspirated thing. So because of that volumetric efficiency, we know what it was, so we can run it up and see what it is now, see if it's become more or less efficient.
Okay. You'll see it straight away.
See it straight away.
Cool.
Then we'll do our fueling, then we'll do the ignition timing, then we'll come back around and do the boost pressure. Keep doing that loop until it's making best power.
I also changed the spring. That was the other thing. Last time we were here, we had problems with the spring. We couldn't get to 30 pounds. We may not need to get to 30 pounds now anyway.
It's disappointing last time. We ran out of
instead of our
spring.
gate being roughly, I think it was sitting, actually can't remember, I think it was like 14 pounds roughly. It should be higher at about 17.
Yeah.
So it's got a 10 and a 7 spring in it, which will get it around there. We know that this engine will absolutely cop 17 or 18 pounds all day, every day.
Yep.
When you get into the mid-20s and higher, that's where we don't know.
Yeah,
but
perfect.
I think that's a pretty safe target.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, let's start at wastegate pressure. Run it up. We'll see on the dyno. We'll compare it. We won't compare it against engine RPM, and we'll compare it simply in 4th gear against road speed.
Okay.
So that way we can't manipulate anything. If the power comes on earlier, I can say, well, it's coming on in 4th gear 15, 20, 30 kilometres earlier than the bigger turbo, but making the same power or making less or making whatever the case. Right. So apples with apples, we can see that pretty quick.
Let's have a look. So bonnet down, send it.
Do it.
Let's go. So because the turbo's different and because the wastegate is different, all the boost pressure stuff kind of goes out the window. There'll be a shape there, but it may not be right.
Data logging always as well. Make
Yep.
sure that all of our data logging channels are happy.
Yep.
Beautiful. Above 2,000 RPM, it's going to start logging everything at super high speed.
Right.
And we're in. I press the button down to get intelligent, which
That's the lowest, yeah.
the lowest boost pressure. So I'll just start with that and see where we end up. Wide open throttle, 3, 2, 1, go. Good mixtures. Oh.
Some weird ABS stuff going on.
Yeah.
Do you need to press and hold anything, or? I remember you did this last time.
But mixtures look good.
Mixtures look great.
But did you see what happened?
It wants to boogie, man. It really wants to boogie early.
So
Are you happy with that
Yeah.
for a turbo swap?
Yeah. Look what just happened.
Oh shit.
So don't worry about all those top numbers.
Yeah.
Let me just turn that fan off. Yeah, I don't really care about the power because
No.
we're well down on boost. But
Roll down on boost is good though. I mean,
yeah,
we don't want to be making 30 pounds right now.
So we made 421, or give or take, was the big number. It
Yes.
just made 281. Heaps less boost pressure, but
Look at that.
look at this bit. So the thing started pointing in the right direction at 3,500 RPM,
Oh, that's great.
whereas before it's a comfortable 1,000 RPM.
That you notice 1,000 RPM on the street,
Yeah,
in
look,
my experience.
Huge.
Yeah, in every gear. Well, most gears, it's gonna crack. Well, great. So, assuming the rest of it holds together, we're on the right track.
So we've basically put a bigger restrictor.
Yeah.
So now let's try and figure out.
We still have that nice big 3.5-inch exhaust behind it, so there's no question that it'll have enough breathing to get out of the turbo, which is good.
Here's something interesting that's happened. So just now, our target and actual air-fuel ratio is pretty close.
Yep.
But when it comes on, look what's happened. I wanted it to be 12.0, and it's actually 13.0 there.
Right.
Look at the part where it's lean.
Is that where our power comes on?
That's the part where we had no boost before. So we've actually made it more efficient in that area.
Okay.
So let's just do the same thing again with a bit more of this and see what happens. But motor sounds heaps better with the top stun.
Yeah, it does.
Wide open throttle, let it rip.
Looks nice, man. That just made 320 kilowatts.
Quite possibly.
That's good. I just
Max
want to also
boost.
point out, for a Subaru, that's a solid number any day of the week.
That's the end of
Any
it. That's
Subaru.
normally the end of the day. We're done.
Yeah, that's like a good solid 2.5 litre engine will make that all day long. When you start going into the 400s, you're talking big expensive builds, billet stuff. Yeah, not always, but usually.
All right. We're going to twist the knob. Geez, it's nice how the
it's lovely, eh?
SI drive stuff comes across. All right, so we'll go to sport.
We go left with the knob, then we're in sport, correct?
All right, now we're going to target 19. And because we needed a few more beans down there, I'm just going to put a few more there as well.
I just want to point out, there's as many lights on the dashboard as your average Volkswagen Golf. Like, check this out. Look at all the lights. Like, this is what it's like to own a Volkswagen.
But in our defence, they will all go off when we're up the dyno. Don't be too worried yet.
Were you pedaling that?
No, it's the boost control.
Oh, really? We're going to make 400 kilowatts anyway.
So I could have come out of it then, but I could see what it was doing and I wanted to get to the boost control, the final number at the end.
Yeah.
So now that I've got that,
We're only 30 or so kilowatts, 60 horsepower away from our peak that we got with the other turbo. And what we've gained is 1,000 RPM of like response, somewhere around that number. So I don't really see a downside now. Maybe with the old turbo, if we got to 30 pounds or above, we would just be sending the engine to the moon. But For a road car, I mean, that's moving, man. That's what a Porsche comes with. That's what a GT4 RS comes with. 500 and something horsepower. In the Subaru. A flat 6 GT4 RS, GT3 RS, whatever it is, that engine, that NA engine, okay, granted no turbos, 500 and something horsepower. 500 and something horsepower in a Levorg. 3 litre from a 3 litre, so a litre less, add a turbo, same power, and that's at the wheels as well, so it's probably a little bit different, but impressive stuff. Very happy with it.
So what was happening there, we were going 3 pounds over target. Boost control is turning off, boost comes down,
Right.
boost turns back on again. So over boost offset is what was happening. To not waste a run, can you see the trend of what I wanted to see anyway?
Yeah.
So that's kind of all I really wanted to look at. So I'm going to increase that over boost offset.
Are you happy with this? I'm very happy with that number already.
It's good power straight away. Remember, we're down on ignition timing as
We
well.
are too, yeah.
So I just want to smooth that out so that that's a bit neater.
And your fueling map basically unchanged, right?
Everything's very similar. All
Right.
the O2 trims are within a few percent. So
Right.
at the moment, the turbo change hasn't been detrimental to the efficiency of the engine, which tells me that it's not like the rear wheel isn't a restriction yet.
Good. And maybe the turbo I had before was the right turbo to make 600 kilowatts rather than 400,
Yeah.
potentially.
Yeah, that's exactly what's going on. All right, we'll go again. No changes. All I've done is just tidy up that boost control.
Yeah. See if we can get a clean run.
It should make less power
Okay.
because the boost is going to come down.
Okay. That is a nice power curve, man. You can tell looking at that, that's good on the street,
Look
can't
at
you?
meaty, eh?
Yeah, man.
Yep.
It's kind of coming back closer to Supergram's power curve is actually what's happening here as well. And that had some advantage where you had more capacity, higher compression, but a stock engine, so you could not lean on it. This is 100 kilowatts more than Supergram's ever made, but the power curve is starting to look similar, which you know straight away is going to be on the street in every gear, is just going to be coming on.
Yeah, ridiculous. These will be good.
That's great.
All right, well, what do we do here? Do we put a few more beans in it? Because at that coming on, to bring it on down low, we've got 25 pounds in it.
Yeah.
And then up top, it comes back to our 21-ish pounds.
Yeah, I mean,
to
it's
hold it
sustained 25 before.
Yep.
This is completely a you thing. I don't care if it makes 25 kilowatts more, 50 kilowatts, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't. So now we're at the point where we kind of get to choose our power and what it stays at. So you have to think about mechanical ability of the components, what are they built to take, and the answer is we don't have an exact number, but more than this. But how long do you want to do more than this for? The design of the turbo system, if our headers are a restriction, if our wastegate's working the way it should, if it's bypassing properly, that's a consideration. Longevity of the drive line's a consideration. How long will it do 400 or 500 kilowatts at the wheels? Long term, that all comes into it. But if the base is right, you get to make the decision, which is a good position to be in, and it's kind of your appetite for risk. I'm keen for a little bit more, but not heaps, because I know already with 425 at the wheels with a big turbo, it was already fast. Now that's going to come on so much sooner that in the street it's going to be even more rapid. And how fast you need to go? Well, as fast as the speed limit, but this thing will also go to the track, which it already has, and it was a weapon on the track as it was.
Okay, you all
It
right?
looks good, yeah, it looks good. Let's go.
Wide open, let it rip.
That's great, man. That's awesome.
That's a good graph to show us what's actually happening there.
Yeah.
It's good down low, I'm going to let it roll just
Yep.
so it doesn't go away, but
Yep.
it's good down low. It's making more power coming on earlier, but see up the top,
Yeah.
rolling off like that?
Yeah.
At that RPM, that's the end of it. That's what this turbo wants to make at big RPM.
Which I was watching the number here, it sat at 25.
So that's not a tuning problem at the top, that's an exhaust restriction.
No worries.
So-
But look what you get for that.
You've just run out of turbocharger.
Yeah. Oh, dude, that's more power.
So
That's the most. It's within 8.8 kilowatts of 600 horsepower.
it's ridiculous, eh?
Why am I keep flipping? I keep flipping because some of you guys understand horsepower, some of you guys understand kilowatts. I keep jumping between both because I'm
Call it
excited.
600. Just call it 600
I can't,
horsepower.
just
at the
didn't
wheels.
make it. But
yes, it's
Scotty,
big.
that is amazing, mate. That is great. We've come here, we've made more power, a more responsive turbo. We're at the end of the turbo, but we know that's the restriction now.
Yeah.
We're out of turbo.
And this
Great.
thing will be wild as it comes on. Now look at that ramp across
This is
across
sick, man.
1,000 RPM. It makes from 100 to 400 kilowatts.
So stoked, man. I'm so stoked with that result.
Yep, very cool.
Oh, dude. That's the number.
All right, so what I've just brought up is, so that red one is what we just ran.
Yep.
The green one is the 421. That was the big banger from last time, from say 1,000 Ks ago with the bigger turbocharger.
Yep.
This is one of the things that always gets me, that you just have to be careful reading dyno sheets, because look at the number, they're the same number. So up the top here,
Yeah, your peak, well, not peak power, but the end number.
the end number, they're both making about 418. The green one, the bigger turbo, admittedly with the bigger turbo, it all ran out of boost control, so I'm sure we could have gone further.
Absolutely.
We don't know where this engine
But
will
we
go.
wouldn't have been able to bring it on any earlier.
No way.
So that's your trade-off.
So the difference down here, look at this thing. This thing's coming on, there is bulk power there. It's coming on 25 kilometres an hour earlier in fourth gear. That's considerable. That's a huge change.
Yep.
But with that, there is a trade-off. Like everything, there's a trade-off. This power equals torque thing, the power is torque times RPM divided by 52. To make that grunt down there, the thing needed to be making more torque down there. So it's now making 1250 newton meters of total torque down there.
That's high, isn't it?
It's
Is that
huge.
a lot?
It's huge. It's grunty as, but it's got good boost
Still,
in it.
I don't think I've ever had a car that's in four figures.
Probably. Well, you had what do you got? 865. The Cresta had
Maybe.
1,000, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
But
Different animal though.
it doesn't all tell the story, because if you're revving high with huge amounts of torque, massive horsepower.
Yes.
But grunty. So this thing's got that grunt down at 4,700 RPM. So remember we talked about the shovel thing? Is that
Yeah. I think about it all the time, especially when I'm digging holes.
So
Little shovel
weird.
faster, big shovel slower.
Yeah. Do you want a motorbike engine, or do you want a diesel engine doing 2,000 RPM and doing lots of bulk work?
Yeah, man.
So this thing has got big shovels doing bulk work down low now, but that does put pressure on our engine. So we've got more cylinder pressure, we've got more pressure on the conrod, we've got more pressure on bottom end bearings. Clearances are way more important. This thing will be pretty like this thing will rip the diffs out of it as it comes on the street.
That's good. That's where I want it to be. If you're gonna go through the effort of building an engine, put it in a car like this. You don't put it in a car like this just to be a dyno hero. It's not the right car. Bring a Supra, bring a Barra, bring something that's made for that. This is for driving and practicality, which you normally don't get together. You've got a two-wheel, two-door sports car thing. It's a driver's car. You can't put anything in it. This has 5 people in it and 4 suitcases, and it makes that power. Sorry, I sound like a Subaru nerd fanatic, and a little bit I am, but I'm so happy with the result. It was so worth it. I so appreciate you taking the time to do it, Scotty.
Mate, just doing a turbo change, like you've spent all this money on this whole car, and I know that it's been a little bit painful to get to this bit.
It has.
But it's a different car now. And the truth is now, maybe like being a Subaru, maybe you do want to drop their power down a little bit, because it's coming on earlier.
Yeah.
You'll get more reliability out of it. But
that's on Sport Sharp though, isn't it? And this is the great thing about this setup. I don't ever really need to run it like that, but I know that it's there. And so you go, bang, you're in sport mode or intelligent, and now you're into the the low 400s or the high 300s. Yeah.
So all you need to do, if you see an Evo coming, go Sports Sharp.
Oh, I'm still going to get chopped probably.
Sport Sharp, you'll race it. You'll probably beat it the first time. Don't race it twice though.
Okay. Scotty, that's great. Thank you. So I don't think there's anything else we really need to talk about. The graph says it all. Your skills, and that's it, people. Thank you very much for watching. Super excited to drive it. Actually, you know what? Let's drive it. Before we say goodbye, I am going to take you for a drive, because I've got to drive home to fix the other car that blew up today. We'll talk about that another time. 3,000 RPM. She's coming up. Whoa! 20 pounds of boost by just over 4,000 RPM. It's a completely different animal. I cannot even begin to explain how much better that is for what I'm doing right now. Roll racing, drag racing, circuit racing, maybe not, but this is the car's natural environment. On a highway, towing something, mates in the car, suitcases, pumping around the streets. It just feels way more alive. Still really revvy, still great. But the boost just winds up. There she goes. and we're moving. So good. So good. Thanks for watching. The Levorg is now nearly complete. I'd say there's one or two things to refine. There's no aircon. I need to put new clutch plates in it. There's a few things I'm going to do, all small stuff, but all very exciting. So just going to enjoy driving it. Thanks for watching. Is your turbo too big? Are you sure? Maybe you need a bigger one, maybe you don't. Bit of science and you'll know the answer for sure.